All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Robots and Red Tape. As always, I am your host, Nick Schutt, and just also want to thank everybody for listening. You guys are you guys are what makes Robots and Red Tape so special. Really appreciate you. Happy to have my friend, Mr. Darryl Peek with me here this morning. Darryl, how are you?
I'm doing well, Nick. Great to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
And man, really appreciate you hopping on and taking a couple minutes to chat with me today. For folks
Pleasure.
that don't know you, man, do you mind telling us like a little bit about yourself, your background, and your story, man? How did you get here, and what do you do?
Absolutely, absolutely. I guess I'll start from the beginning. I'm from Philadelphia, so I grew up there. And then when I went into undergrad, I started out at Morehouse, transferred to Pitt, got a degree in computer engineering, and then I started working at Lockheed Martin straight out of college. So then I started to figure out what I wanted to do. Got into system engineering, so I was supporting the intelligence community, supporting satellites and unmanned air vehicles. And then I wanted to go further. So I went and got my master's at Penn State University. I got a master's in systems engineering and continued to work at Lockheed and really just learn about the processes, learn about the public sector, and just fell in love with public sector. So I've been in public sector ever since. I came down to this area, oh man, a while ago. I started working for a mid-tier company, and then I thought about what do I want to do in order to really understand the requirements that are coming out of government? So I was actually asked by the deputy CIO at State Department at the time, was I interested in joining the government? At that time, he was going to start a great program around cybersecurity called the CDM program, or Continuous Diagnostics and Mitigation. And he said that with your background in engineering, as well as being able to help with the acquisition and process side, would you want to come on board? Came on board, stayed at DHS for about 5 years, and not only in the cybersecurity area, but in headquarters CTO. And then I wanted to transition because we talked about cloud a lot. We talked about agile. We talked about modernization, low code, no code. So wanted to get that experience. So ended up going over to Salesforce for a little bit, do strategy and BD for the public sector across federal and state and local. And then I wanted to get back into management because I was in the individual contributor role, which took me to Google. So I was there at Google, ran the federal partner team. So I was really excited to do that and work with an amazing team over at Google and at an amazing organization, one of my dream jobs. And then I was approached by Elastic to say, you want to take your show from federal to all of public sector, work with an amazing team, work with an amazing product, but also work with the open source product. So that was something that I was very interested in because it's very interesting when you have to compete against yourself,
Hmm.
right? So when you have a open source product that is offered for free and folks can download, and you have a paid version which actually has maintenance and support associated to it, as well as a lot of great capability, how do you have that conversation with a customer in order for them to consider that product? So I'm now the VP of partnerships over at US for US Public Sector at Elastic, and I've been there for almost 3 years now. So it's been great. I got an amazing team, worked with an amazing leadership team and helping to shape the global partner strategy for Elastic. So it's been a lot of fun, and I'm really glad to be there, and definitely a phenomenal product.
Yeah, man, absolutely. For folks that don't know what Elastic is, do you mind just giving like the high level 1,000 foot view so people explain what Elastic is, what it
Right.
does, and where it sits within the ecosphere.
Absolutely. So really, Elastic is being able to give you the answers and the outcomes that you're looking for. We started out as an open source search uh, program or search platform. And then we evolved it to also include observability, which is observing your environment and looking at application performance monitoring and logging and tracing, as well as security, which is our SIM solution or security information and event management, as well as our threat intelligence, endpoint, and cloud security. So the way that we are looking at the market is saying, when you think about search, and getting the answers that you're looking for and creating a better customer experience, well, that is where you start to look at the response time, the accuracy, the efficiency of that platform. Then when you're looking at your operational environment is really saying, okay, well, where are you seeing latency? Where are you seeing impacts to the operations environment within your company or organization? And thirdly is that when do you see those anomalies? When is something happening? When does something go bump in the night? And how fast are you getting those alerts? As well as how are you able to remediate that? So our tagline is that we are the search AI company because it comes down to data. When you
Mhm.
think about those three areas that I talked about, search, observability, and security, it all comes down to data and the data that's going in to uncover insights that you're looking for. So when you think about Uber and Lyft, that's based on Elastic. I usually say a lot of folks are already using Elastic. When you think about Netflix, when you think about Wikipedia.com, when you think about Booking.com, those are companies that have trusted Elastic in order to unlock insights. But we also have a lot of great use cases. The CDM program leverages Elastic for the CDM dashboard, as well as a number of other organizations that are really benefiting from not only the effectiveness of the tool, but also the innovation that's built inside the tool with AI.
Yeah, man, no, that's fantastic. And we here at Robots and Red Tape, we spend a lot of time talking about data, right? Because
Right.
it's your AI is only as good as the data it's trained on. And as you look at where you guys sit within the market across all of the, monitoring, search and event logging, like that's huge amounts of data that gets, ingested. And then and then how do you as folks that are out here talking about, RAG, retrieval
Right.
augmented generation, man, everybody's talking about how amazing it is. From where you sit, man, what is the specific problem that RAG solves for partners, and more importantly, when is it the wrong tool for the mission?
Absolutely. So when we think about retrieval augmented generation, it really does come down to a conversation on when you are using broader tools like, you think about Gemini, you think about ChatGPT, you think about Claude and other LLMs, it really is pulling in data from a lot of different sources. So you're getting a lot of different answers that are aggregated, and the algorithm is trying to understand what it is that you're trying to solve. Now, when you think about retrieval augmented generation, it is really shrink wrapping that answer around the data within your organization. So I mentioned Uber and Lyft, and when we think about Uber and Lyft, Uber has customer data for their customers. However, you don't want that data to also be shared with, the competitor. So
Mhm.
being able to say, okay, well, this is my data. These are the insights that I need. I need to understand who this passenger is and make sure we can connect them with that driver. That is where you think about it. So it grounds the LLM that you're using. So it could be, ChatGPT, it could be Gemini, it could be, some other LLM, and it creates a permission data. So you're actually utilizing the data that is authorized within your organization and applicable to your organization. So if you think about employee data, and you think about your benefits package, well, if you just go into the internet and just ask for a benefits package, well, it may not provide you with that right information. However, if you have something internal to your organization utilizing RAG, that is where you'll see the benefit. Now, where it's wrong is when your data quality is poor. So it's all, when you think about garbage in, garbage out, that is really the challenge that is associated to creating a GPT within or generative AI within your organization is that if your data is not good or clean, then you're
Mhm.
going to run into challenges and you're going to get some hallucination from that feedback. And also when you need deterministic accuracy. So when you think about legal determinations, when you think about payments, when you think about eligibility, those things are, still challenges that RAG doesn't necessarily solve all the time. So you still need a human in the loop in order to ensure those outcomes, right? So as far as Elastic, we are a RAG solution. We do have hybrid and vector search relevance tuning, which actually provides you that right insight, timely insights, and also it helps in creating better outcomes for the customer.
Yeah, man, no, 100%, and I appreciate that. And as you think about, especially I love around like very very regulated industries, right? Whether you think finance, you think about you think about like finance industry, you think about legal, right? You think about medical and like medical research specifically, right? I don't want a tool that a researcher's using as a generative AI tool to be trained on the whole internet, right?
Right.
When you think about just the amount of garbage information that's out there, to your point around garbage data, like that I feel like that can get very, very dangerous and have a lot of, bad implications, where, you have all of these people out here that are, one of the things that I think social media has done is it's made everybody think that their opinion is equal, right? Uh,
Hmm.
just because you have an opinion, just because I have an opinion about, like medicine and my opinion doesn't matter as much as my doctor's, right? Because
Right, right,
they were trained on that specifically. They have way more knowledge, and I don't want them to be using my medical opinions as data for their research, right? So you start thinking about
right,
how you protect these things in regulated industries or
right.
very high impact industries. Maybe in the intelligence community and other places as well. It's super important to make sure that the information you have is accurate. And as you think about public sector, right? And this is not just public sector. This is all like all companies, I think. I think data infrastructure and data in general is very, very siloed, very, very messy. Um, how do you help folks like that as you look at implementing, a solution with people for people? How do you help them understand the importance of their data not being siloed, and how do you like help them clean it?
Absolutely. And one of the things, and I appreciate that context, Nick. And when we think about, AI ready data, it does not necessarily mean that it's perfect data, and you're not
Hmm.
going to have a perfect outcome. One of the things that we talk about is that when you look many moons ago, there was a lot of structured data. When you had rows and columns, and you're able to populate that data, and it was really aligned. So you think about the identification of states.
Hmm.
There was a time when all of it was standardized. Now it's not standardized. You may get Maryland, you may get MD. And based on that data, how does the algorithm then interpret it so this way you can get the best outcome? And the
Hmm.
second part of it, you mentioned, being able to have applicable outcomes, and you talked about the public sector, which is really important. And you think about the other industries, you think about healthcare, you think about financial services, you think about manufacturing. Those areas are also in need of context. So
Hmm.
making sure that you have context for that particular industry is really important. So it's not just making sure that you have just enough information and enforcing some of the least privilege that is associated to it. So the one thing that we run into is not only making sure you have the right data and that use case ready data, but also that you have need to know.
Hmm.
Because if you're an executive within an organization and you're asking questions of your generative AI solution, and then you have someone who is an individual contributor or entry level employee, well, you don't want to get the same answer back
Hmm.
because some of it may have implication to your organization. So being able to have those controls in place are very important. And
Hmm.
when we think about those data silos, one of the things that Elastic does, it brings it all together. It
Hmm.
harmonizes that data in creating the ingest opportunity. So this way you can uncover those insights based on certain common schemas that are the customer is looking for.
Hmm.
And when you think about that, we want to make sure that that information is relevant. We want to make sure it's quality. And also, we don't want to pay for the data coming in and out.
Hmm.
And we do have an approach utilizing resource-based pricing that helps the customer pay for that resource-based pricing, but not necessarily ingesting and just the moving of data, which is really important. So making sure that you have that use case ready data is important, and also that you're using AI tools that are creating the outcomes and insights that you're looking for. So messy data is real, but doesn't necessarily require you to have perfect data in order to leverage those AI tools.
Yeah, man. No, and I agree with you. I also think that like I had a episode. I did an episode over this last summer with a gentleman. We were talking about the current administration. They were talking about wanting to create like unified medical records for people, right?
Mhm.
And when you look at our country's healthcare system versus folks that have single payer systems, right? Um, the data set is so incomplete here. I mean, think about every doctor you've ever been to. They all have different information on you, right? And all of that doesn't go to the insurance company. They just send over what they need to get their authorization, right? And because of how siloed all of it is, it's really hard to create massive data sets where you can run
Right.
analytics on say that every single person in the country and their healthcare system and their health to understand like the health of the country in different ways compared to somebody like England or France that has a single payer system.
Right.
What do what do you think? Like, are there other areas that you think are where the data is just so spread out that it's hard for folks to really it's hard to unify it? And he's like, are there other spots you think that's the case?
Yes, and it's interesting that you say that because there's two areas that really jump out, and that's the conversation around data retrieval, where
Hmm.
you are pulling in the right data or the most relevant data, and then governance of that data. So making sure that you have that governance in place in order to monitor what are the responses that are being received and is it really aligned with the outcome that you're expecting. One of the things that we're trying to navigate is that you got a lot of AI apps that are out there. You got a lot of folks that are using some co-pilot like solutions as well as analytic workflows and trying to put that in. And it's because what's happening is the things are demoing very well.
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So when you get that great demo, it's answering all the questions, it's addressing all the needs, yes, 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 and you don't look at what that data retrieval, like what data warehouses and what data lakes are you going to be pulling from in order to gain that insight? What is relevant to your organization? So this way it is providing the answers that you're looking for. And also what access controls does that LLM have in place? So this way it does gets the right information at the level at the right time. And all those areas are important. And if you don't have them, then you have, what they call an opinion engine, which is just providing you results based on whatever is being provided, right? So one of the things that, we talk about in Elastic is really around how it is important to have that relevant data, how it is important to have that proper data retrieval, as well as security, and also the ability to audit
Hmm.
because you want to defend your organization against hallucination, getting the wrong answers, and then perpetuating those answers to, a downstream customer or stakeholder that may be relying on it to answer mission outcomes.
Yeah, no, and I think that's it's absolutely fascinating, and I think legal is a really interesting case where like legals because for folks to really use these in legal system like use these across like law firms or in DA's offices at DOJ, what have you. Like it needs to be repeatable. You need to be able to prove that you put the same input creates the same output, right?
Right.
And that is impossible when you ask the same question to an AI engine every day, and it'll give you a different answer based on it, right?
Right.
In addition to that, as it is using your inputs to iterate, to retrain itself and to iterate and to try to improve itself, it becomes, the outputs are not repeatable, which means that you can't defend it in a court case, in the you can't bring that to a judge. It's not evidence, right? And so
Right.
are those things that you think that those things that are you addressing those as well, or is that kind of outside of your scope?
Well, I would say that there's a definitely a conversation to have around that area. And though I'm not a legal expert, I will
Yeah.
say that one of the challenges in regards to co-pilot and potential liability is over permission data access and giving too much access. Because if you're giving a lot of access, then that algorithm is pulling from that data and providing insights, as well as the lack of auditing and
Hmm.
making sure that you have the audit trail and then protection against that prompt injection, which is still an issue, right? So making sure you secure your LLM for your organization. So if a algorithm can see everything, then something may surface that it shouldn't.
Hmm.
Right? So
Yeah.
when you think about, logging and you think about, the wrong responses, we talked about hallucination a little bit earlier, but also mixing of sensitive and non-sensitive data in that response.
Hmm.
What information shouldn't be shared? And also, you hear cases about folks that are uploading files that are sensitive,
Yeah.
that
Didn't
are
didn't the
classified.
didn't the acting director of CISA, didn't something come out about him uploading stuff into ChatGPT this week?
I think there was something that did come out about that, and just being, just being, able to look at it from a broad perspective, that is something that, your organization or you inside your organization should not do, right? Folks should not be uploading sensitive information to the public internet or to a public generative AI solution because, once again, mixing of sensitive and non-sensitive data is a concern, and also making sure that you have the proper, red teaming and blue teaming, right? So how do you do the testing of your particular environment or your generative AI solution? So this way you make sure that it is not providing the wrong data or the wrong access. So Elastic is helpful from that perspective because we do specialize in least privilege. We specialize in strong access control, whether it's role-based access control or attribute-based access control. And also you can audit that data access. So that's making sure you have an auditable trail across your network. So this way you have that proper governance so that this way there's not a lot of liability associated to you leveraging a Copilot like solution.
Yeah, man. No, and that's super important. I know that at one point when we were deploying a records management system for an agency, I won't say which one, we imported every single article, every single
Mhm.
document that this agency has into this
Right.
one system, right? And there were problems where it's not only that like there was people had access to records that were sensitive and they shouldn't have. It was also that only like small pieces of documents are considered classified or secret or and so and we actually had to take the system offline for a couple of days to rework that solution to make sure that we make sure that people had the right access. But as you look at things like around only part of a document is sensitive, right? How do you filter all of that out? Do you let people have access to some of the document or not others? And and that just it gets very, very complicated very, very quickly as you move into the weeds around things like that, right?
Right. And
Uh,
yeah, and that's a great point. And I'm sorry, were you going to say
no,
something?
no, no, go ahead, Darryl.
Well, the one thing that I would uh like to recommend is that, a lot of folks think role-based access control is the answer and it is the only answer. And in a lot of cases, it is missing some aspects, right? Because when you think about role-based, of course, it's your role in the organization, but also what about the attributes that are associated with it? Does this person have the right clearance? Are
Mhm,
they aligned to the program? Are they aligned to that specific case or even geography? And when you think about that, is that, if someone is logging in from a certain location in the world, well, they may not be the right person to access that data.
mhm,
So being able to have that in place is important. So, when we look at data, we are looking to secure that data at the source and not at retrieval. So this way you can make sure you are not compromising
mhm,
the access control gaps that could happen if you're just relying on RBAC without looking to complement it with that attribute-based access control, which is also important for mission outcomes. So where we are from an Elastic perspective is looking at RBAC and ABAC as a way to look at the audit trail, but also look at the access trail and help to address that access control
mhm.
gap.
Yeah, and I would assume you guys have, like an AI engine looking at that
Right.
and looking at that in real time,
Yep.
and seeing, oh, Nick logged into this system every day from this location, right? And then all of a
Right.
sudden you pop up in the Philippines, right? And it's not right, man. You
Right.
can't get in here. Even if I'm in the Philippines, right? Like, because there's a whole bunch of stuff around that you really shouldn't be able to do. And so I would assume that that's the case as you look at that, right?
Right. Well, and that is the case. And being able to, track it and being able to account for it. And that's where the audit comes into perspective. So, one of the things that I do appreciate, and this is being done by a number of organizations, are if you or if it identifies you logging in from a different location, and it doesn't have to be necessarily overseas, it could be in another state.
Hmm.
It
Yep.
will at least prompt you and give you a notification that, okay, well, did you log in from California and I'm in the DC area? So you want to be able to make sure you're accounting for that. But that's where the importance of having those monitors in place to help with, making sure you don't have unauthorized access is very important.
Hmm.
So that's one of the things that we are definitely accounting for and looking at within the org.
Yeah, man, and people are still the weak link, right? Like you
Right.
look at where most security breaches happen, right? Yeah, you can get in a lot of different ways for these systems that are even remotely public facing, right? But that being said, as you look at, like people are the weak link, right?
Right.
Maybe you have a whole bunch of you have people on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a great source for for
Absolutely.
intelligence agencies. They can see who works where, what clearance you have, where you do.
Right.
And that becomes just like it's great for us on our side, but as we talk to people, but there's also a lot of liability around that, because like for instance, every single very, very secure facility has janitors, right? There's
Yes.
a lot of low paid employees there that are going
Right.
to be very open, or going to be, I'm not going to say very open, but are going to be more open to like money, like being given like $1 million and just go plug this thing into the system somewhere, right? As you're in
Mhm.
there all day, every day. And so, like finding ways to ensure that you can mitigate the person to person, like roles is like that's very, very difficult. And there's a whole,
Absolutely.
I mean, that's counterintelligence largely, right?
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely. Mhm.
no, go ahead.
Well, and that's one of the things that we, look at is how to just really manage against, ensuring the effectiveness of that organization,
Hmm.
ensuring that we are seeing the outcome, but also not getting into accounting for certain metrics that are not relevant to that particular organization. So, one of the conversations that do come up is, well, AI is supposed to improve productivity.
Hmm.
And, looking at ways to measure those outcomes, some folks get, focused on the hour saved. And a lot of that is qualitative and not quantitative.
Hmm.
And saying, okay, well, I think I saved about 3 hours today
Hmm.
using AI. But one of the conversations I think needs to be had is around measurable outcomes
Hmm.
with a particular baseline. How much is your team doing in a specific area? And with the introduction of these AI tools, how is it reducing the amount of time that it takes them to complete a particular task or activity? How does it look at improving certain quality of that particular product in regards to
Hmm.
rework as well as in regards to, errors that are received? I was talking to a gentleman last week about Six Sigma. I remember when Six Sigma was really big and trying to get to those, reducing those overall defects, but is AI helping us to get closer to that, as well as the need for escalation and also some of the compliance metrics that are associated to the organization. So I would say that when you measure around cost per outcome and you're looking at, cases, when you're looking at tickets, when you're looking at investigations, those are important, but those can actually be captured in that system data.
Hmm.
So if you're using a tool that has an audit trail, well, it can provide a lot of insights for you to make sure that the productivity that you are looking for or that you're gaining is something that you can audit and validate with that system information.
Hmm.
So, when we talk about the opportunity, well, from an Elastic perspective, we collect telemetry and workflow data
Yep.
that you can audit. So therefore, you are able to really aggregate and understand the actual productivity of your team, as well as the importance of baselining. So that is the importance of working with that partner or customer in order to say, well, what is your baseline, and how can we see that improvement in those outcomes?
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I mean, I think that as you look at like measuring impact of AI, right? Yeah, you're right. If you save 3 hours today, like what else did you do with those 3 hours, right?
Right.
And what were you able to accomplish that you weren't able to otherwise? And I think it's absolutely fascinating. See, how do you what do you think the best metrics are to measure an organization's productivity, and how do you think how do you think it should be measured as opposed to hours saved, truthfully?
It's a lot of metrics that you consider. And when you think about, certain outcomes that we're looking at, and specifically from the Elastic perspective. So we talk about observability and how that is really important. And there are, expensive behaviors. So when we think about the use of tools, right?
Hmm.
And tool sprawl and swivel chair, those are areas to understand and say, okay, well, are we doing these things effectively and efficiently? Or are we spending a lot of time by grabbing logs from multiple tools or by leveraging multiple tools or by having our teams learn these different solutions that often have some level of overlap?
Hmm.
So those things are really important. And as far as the number of alerts, you could go into alert jail
Hmm.
in regards to tracking all the alerts and what's happening. So, how do you really prioritize the alerts based on high priority alerts versus those all alerts that are coming in? Because some of them may be false positives, some of them may be not relevant for action at that time. And
Hmm.
then we want to, kind of limit the idea of creating a metric around over provisioning and for the just in case activity or outcome that may happen. So that's really looking at visibility, looking at the ability to forecast, and making sure that you are focusing on the right things while trying to reduce the wrong metric to track. As far as number of widgets may not be a good metric, but number of widgets that have a defect may be a better metric.
Yeah, absolutely. And what are some of the biggest bottlenecks in federal SOCs today? And if you could redesign one part of a federal SOC, what do you want to fix first? Is like telemetry, triage, authority to act, and like what do you think the most important pieces are?
Um, and you just mentioned it, right? So one of the biggest challenges within security operations centers are, triage without context, right? Is just, solving things and solving things, and sometimes moving the visual of moving one stack of paper to the other side of the desk, and those are things that sometimes can get become challenging for that SOC organization because one, they receive too many alerts, right? As a
Mhm.
human, it's almost like playing tennis, right? When you have a tennis match, playing against one tennis player is, sufficient, but when you got two or three on the other side that are coming at you, you as a
Mhm.
tennis player will not be able to manage all the balls that are coming towards you.
Told you
So
somebody
how
was
do
going to
you
make an
have
appearance.
that in that?
Told
And
you
how
somebody
do
was going to
you
make an appearance.
Yes, absolutely. So how do you manage all those alerts? How do you make sure that you have the context and correlation? How do you make sure you have the right rule and playbooks in place, as
Mhm.
well as make sure that the analysts are not wasting their time, stitching data across these different data assets which are not aggregated. And that's one of the things that we're trying to have a conversation about is creating focus on that correlation and making sure that we do prioritize the most important alerts so that you do have analysts spending time on the most critical outcomes. I say, we can't major minor things in the SOC.
Mhm.
It's too critical, right? If your organization becomes compromised, then that is a very difficult conversation to have, not only with your leadership team, with your overall team, with your customers, and also with your board. So we want to make sure that we are able to provide those insights and make sure that we are not spending time on low value alerts when there are high value priorities that need to be addressed. And when we focus on that, I think there is a opportunity for us to connect the identity information. When we talk about the endpoint information, we talk about your network, you talk
Mhm.
about the cloud and different case contexts that you need to take consider. And that's where Elastic, we talk about investing on the important areas, and we help prioritize those areas through a number of innovative solutions that we've incorporated into the platform. And one thing that I would say about Elastic is that they release every 8 weeks.
Mhm.
And we, as a
Yeah.
team, so being able to keep our customers and our partners up to date on that is definitely important. So this way they are providing that latest capability in the environment. But also if they're on a previous release, that we get them to the latest release so they are using the latest and greatest where they can get some of those benefits, which they may not have had in the previous release.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, obviously maintaining you're fixing critical, any critical security gaps, right?
Right,
That's super, super important, especially as I mean, I know that we've seen that a lot of foreign actors have been using like agentic AI to conduct pretty much automated attacks, right?
right.
And and like that also something that I've been thinking about a lot, Daryl, is like, we've talked a little bit about like the dangers of hallucinations, right? And I think that's very, it's like in generative models, that's super, super, super important. But I think that it gets even more important when you start looking at agentic models, right? Where instead of just giving you data, it's actually performing a function, right? And then but also like as you look at accountability, right? And when AI, when it sounds right but is wrong, uh,
Right.
who is, whose fault is that? Like who, and how do you coach your federal clients and your federal partners to on like trusting, like verifying the system is right in generative situations, but also like as you look at agentic solutions as well.
Yes. So yeah, you're bringing up a great point, and agentic is definitely the evolving, proactive side of AI, and having the authority to act is, something that folks are, you know, naturally concerned about. And I think that, certain solutions around agentic AI should have guardrails around them, right? So it said you can't just act on everything.
Mm-hmm.
I talk about AI and the evolution of agentic to Iron Man and Jarvis, right?
Mm-hmm.
Still needed Iron Man and a lot of the actions that were required, but Jarvis was able to provide a lot of insights as well as take a lot of actions. But when it comes to agentic within your organization, maybe you want to explore those low risk areas, but have high confidence in the action that the tool or solution is going to make. So
Mm-hmm.
this way, you're reducing that overall dependency upon not getting it right. So when it does come to something that is more high impact or high risk, that is where you need a human in the loop. So this way, they can help really adjudicate and understand what it needs to happen and what that next action is. And also, when we think about the authority to act, we have to make sure that the decisions that they are making or that the tool is making is able to be auditable. And
Mm-hmm.
once you're able to audit those outcomes, then you can start determining, okay, well, is this solution doing the right thing when
Mm-hmm.
it comes to taking that action, or is it, something that we need to probably take a step back on and include our analysts on a lot more of the decisions that are being made. So when we think about the agentic side, it really is understanding the workflows, creating the visibility, having the auditability, but also make sure that you are increasing the speed without sacrificing control of the decision and of the outcomes in your environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also making sure you have the right, the right auditing system set up and
Absolutely.
bringing the human in the loop once you get outside of a certain parameter, right? I mean that becomes
Mhm.
very, very difficult. But obviously making sure you have a human in the loop. But I also think that like being in certain situations, being able to like especially like in like military situations, being able to turn up and turn down how much a human is in the loop is super important because adversaries may not have that same kind of approach and thought around what we're, around
Right.
AI systems in general, right? Uh,
Right.
it's super fascinating, man. And then, and then how do you, and then, as how, where do you think is as you look at the political environment right across administrations and how the last couple times things have changed, there's been some very, very, very stark differences in priorities for different
Right.
administrations. And the budgets get changed for different agencies. Some go up, some go down. And how do you modern how do you create and build a recession-proof mission and like what modernization efforts are like more durable across administrations as the budget gets tighter.
Right. So that's a good question. And when it comes to, administration changes and even, as you think about the fiscal years of a lot of federal agencies, and SLED is on a different fiscal year. But making sure that there's an understanding of the investments that are made by organizations. I remember when I was at Homeland Security, I was a core, and we did have requirements that were associated to priorities. Now, when I was in government, cybersecurity was a big conversation, cloud, big conversation, agile, big conversations. And that is something that, we were able to manage against and pivot to in certain cases because at one time it was about data center consolidation, right? So you
Mhm.
remember those stories.
Yeah,
So
man.
being able to have a governance in place that is, able to pivot when necessary is important. But some of the things that are, I will say, needed regardless of the administration that is in place are, your security data and
Hmm.
security telemetry and making sure you understand the areas of detection of
Hmm.
where those issues may reside. And when you think about the access controls, those things, as far as the rules may change a bit, but the need for access control and data governance is still critical across any administration.
Hmm.
And I will say that one thing that when you think about the shrinking budgets that are associated to organizations, one thing that I would talk to some of the leaders about was that some of the programs and some of the tools would be in place for years and years and years, and it only have a few users. It's like,
Hmm.
why are we still using this?
Yeah.
Oh, well, this one person needs it for this one data pool that they do once a year. It's like,
Yeah. Right.
why are we doing this to ourselves? This is an
Mm-hmm.
investment that we can reprioritize. So being able to do consolidation of the various platforms and make sure that you are reducing your overall tool sprawl is important because as you shrink that overall budget, well, you want to make investments in the right outcomes and the right platforms that are giving you the what you need because maybe that custom tool was good 10 years ago, but it may not be good today. And being able to do the retrospective, and that's utilizing some agile terms,
Yeah.
is really important to drive it. And as far as the citizen services and the citizen benefit as well as being able to look at how those applications are performing, that's where you think about certain tools associated to observability, right, making sure that you have the right observability tools in place in order to account for how those citizens are engaging but how it is performing and
Mm-hmm.
also scale, right? If you have a natural disaster, well, you want an application that can support the population of that particular area that is impacted.
Mm-hmm.
So those are things that, need to be a constant conversation associated to the governance of that particular agency, but also in line with the administration's priorities. Now, one of the things that we talk about in our company is that really looking at consolidating those capabilities. So, how do we consolidate? How do we augment? And how do we complement the solution architecture that is in place? So this way we can help achieve the best outcome, but also account for any reduction in funding that is received by that organization. So, if we think about the, use cases around surge, security, analytics, observability, well, how do you lessen that operational friction as well as account for that administration's funding priorities and having the tools that are able to still provide those features and capabilities regardless of the administration in place?
Yeah, and the tool sprawl is so real, man. Like
Oh, yeah.
I see it in my organizations, and we're nowhere near the size of a federal agency, right? And so you look at, you look at like, I think it's important to like, on a quarterly basis, reassess the tools you have and see whether or not you still need the ones that you
Right,
still need all of them, right? And are there ways that you can consolidate all this functionality into less tools, right?
right,
Because I think that, as you look at, especially with the pace at which things are changing and are going to continue to change and improve within AI. One of the things I like to tell people is that like the AI we're using today, this is the floor. Like this is the worst it's going to be for the rest of our lives, right?
right.
And so as you continue to do, continue to move forward and continue to do that, like, and as it continues to improve and improve and evolve, I think there's going to be a lot of legacy tools and a lot of legacy companies that are no longer going to be relevant.
Right, right. And that's the I think the biggest challenge. I you know what? I start at our own homes, right? At
Hmm.
one time, you only had one or two devices that connected to the internet. Now they say the average home has what, 10 to 12 or even more than that.
Oh, no, I've never
And
counted. I've
But
never
if you think
counted,
about
man.
it, if your family has phones, if you have everyone has laptops,
Hmm.
if folks are using the smart devices, smart TVs, you think about your everyone, a lot of folks have their different Alexas or Google
Hmm.
Homes, things of that nature. All those things are connecting,
Yeah.
and then you multiply that by what an organization is using.
Hmm.
It's a lot of demand.
Yeah, it is.
And if you're able to, now look at, well, okay, well, what is the ROI, right? What is the return on investment that we're receiving? And also, how do we look at the economics of that outcome? And that's where you're looking at, okay, well, what is the total cost?
Hmm.
And what is the value per outcome that you're receiving, whether that is associated to, once we talk about the customer experience or we talk about operational resilience or even how the security of your infrastructure.
Hmm.
How are we able to aggregate that and how are we able to look at that return on investment? Because things do cost more as you are adding more. So you think about data, right? We just talked
Hmm.
about the home example. If you think about the amount of data each of those devices are develop are building and are delivering and are sending through your particular router, well, then that definitely creates a increase in outcome, but actually should it increase the cost.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about it, a lot of folks talk about cheaper, safer, faster, and higher quality, but it's really about the outcome
Mm-hmm.
and how you are able to achieve that outcome at a production scale. So that is something that we do talk to our customers about, is saying, well, one, how important is this to you? How much of this is a priority? And how can we help you achieve that outcome as associated to that priority?
Mm-hmm.
So, one of the things that you talk about tech sprawl
Mm-hmm.
and tool sprawl. And how do we reduce that? Well, hopefully tools are able to help consolidate that a bit. I remember, before the state of the cell phone, you had to have a camera, you had to have a recording
Mm-hmm.
device, you had to have, a calculator, like all those things you had to have. Now you have them in one device, and
Yeah, man.
shouldn't the same be considered for some of the applications that we're using?
Mm-hmm. It
And
should
that's what
be.
we're starting to see. That's what the AI tools are actually helping out with, as
Yeah,
well
man.
as some of the applications that we are using. So, making sure that you have the best context that you're providing your customer, as well as making sure that you're streamlining that plumbing so that this way you aren't having a situation where you have to use multiple tools or you have swivel chair that are getting you the same outcome. So, that is something that we do focus on to make sure that the cost versus value is actually achieved.
Yeah, man. And dude, speaking of calculators, I was looking through a box the other day. I found my old TI-83 from high school, man. The old
Yeah.
calculator. You
I
know?
used to have the TI-89. That was
Yeah.
one of my go-tos
Yeah, man.
when I was in my engineering program.
Absolutely. But like, like those are specialized tools, right? Like I'm sure you could do that on your phone. I mean, actually, I know
Right.
you could. I'm sure there's a TI-83 or whatever emulator on your like app for you. But like like the devices and the just the number of devices everybody has is crazy, man. I was sitting calculating it, like I was like, how many devices in my house connect to the internet? It's
Mm,
like it's a lot. Like I'm
yeah.
looking at four of them right now, and it's like and that's just in my basement, right? Like I also like and then you start looking at the infrastructure costs associated with all of this, right? I know
Right.
everybody's talking about power requirements for data centers, building more data centers,
Yes.
and like the amount of power that a large AI data center uses on every second, right, is the equivalent to a mid-size city in this country, right?
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, you have the AI data center and the city of Richmond are using about the same amount of power,
Yes.
right? And
Right.
then you start looking at how much we're going to need to invest in our power infrastructure, which is old and not unified, and it was built in a very piecemeal way. And then like and then there's Texas, which is just doing Texas things, as it relates to their power grid. It's wild, man. And
Right.
like that's just, how do you think that um how do you think that, like, from a societal perspective, that the we're gonna be able to, like, essentially, you know create, how do we justify the cost, right? And
Right.
how, and because like investments in that is like, it's a zero sum game. Like we could either do that or we could build schools, right? And
Right.
like, not just that, but like how do we make sure that we're building the right amount of value around AI in general?
Right. And that's a great question, because you are seeing a rise in infrastructure needs and support of a lot of these solutions. And right now there's a lot of strong investment that is coming to these companies, and I think that is the scaffolding that is holding it all together, because we have investors who are still very positive on the potential economic impact of AI and the need for AI. But when it comes to that being long term, well, we have to make sure that the investor core still is strong in that area, but also that organizations, and without calling them out specifically, are able to be profitable over
Mhm.
time. A lot of them are operating at a deficit, just due to the amount of power that is required and the amount of infrastructure that's required, but also the cost to the consumer.
Hmm.
And the question then becomes, do these tools become a commodity, and where we use them like search? Or do they become a at a cost, And will that cost be something that is attractive to the population?
Hmm.
And I think that investment to, profitability comparison has to be done over time. So this way we understand, well, is AI really going to be, that keepsake in the future? Or as you said, will we have to reprioritize because certain critical infrastructure elements need to be supported?
Hmm. Absolutely.
So that is those are some big conversations that I'm sure are going to take place over the next couple of years because we talked about this prior to the show, but you're having workforce implications.
Hmm.
So how can you then create those new opportunities for those folks that are impacted? And will the job market support those who are, unemployed at the moment that need to get the skills to get into some of those, new jobs that are being created, like prompt engineering, like data analysts, like AI engineer, and things of that nature that will be required in order to support this industry that is starting to grow significantly.
Yeah, and I think that there's going to be a lot of new jobs created in this industry. Because of this industry, my concerns around it is like the it's not going to be a one for one swap, and there's a
Right.
much like it is a much higher barrier for entry to be a data scientist than there is to do a lot of other
Yes.
things, right? uh
Right.
Education, like you can't just grab people and put them in an 8-week crash course and have them come out being a data scientist, like you could with a sysadmin,
Right.
or like a Salesforce admin. You can do that pretty easily. um
Right.
but it's going to continue to get harder. And like and I know that like the from like a revenue perspective, like I'm sure you saw that OpenAI just recently announced a couple weeks back that they're going to start putting ads in some of their
Right. Hmm.
things. And like I've been saying this for a long time, like how long do you think it's going to be until there's a sponsored answer and your AI? And like now we're here, like here we
Right.
are, right? They
Right.
need to
Right.
generate revenue. They
Well,
Yeah, and they're not doing it. When you look, and they're also OpenAI is also at a serious disadvantage compared to like Google, because Google already has all the data centers all over the world, and they've
right.
already made that investment, right?
Yes. Right. Right.
Um,
And you're right. And this is interesting that you said that because, the comparison of, a hyperscaler is that they already have the infrastructure that supports what they're doing in a number of their other products or features. Whereas when you have an application that is totally based on AI without a lot of the infrastructure, then they are playing catch up. And it is a different game that each is bringing to the market. So that is truly a good point that you just made.
yeah, and it'll be fascinating to see where all this goes, man. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how long, like the tolerance the investors are going to have when you look at um, just the amount of ground that OpenAI needs to make up, right? And
Yeah.
same thing with Anthropic as well, right? Like the amount of ground you need to make up when you don't have that infrastructure compared to these folks is just gargantuan. And
Right. Well,
we'll see.
but you just brought up a good point though that, I just want to double tap on is that, as you introduce ads and things of that nature, and that's one of the things that even, I saw some articles on TikTok, right, introducing shopping and ads and how that is creating a negative experience for a number of users that are on the platform, and they're going now to other platforms in order to reduce that amount of impact. But also, we trust, AI to a certain extent because it is considered to be unbiased
Hmm.
and prioritized. But what we saw with search, right? Search was just a platform that really looked at no nearest neighbor and just looked at sentiment and looking at the various vector searches and looking at saying, okay, well, how do we then get the right answer? But then you start seeing sponsored, right?
Hmm.
Start seeing ads, and you
Hmm.
start seeing all these different things and saying, well, are you providing me the answer that I'm looking for based on all the data points that I have, or are you providing me something that is giving me closer to your advertisers and
Hmm.
investors? So those are things that we definitely need to keep an eye on as we go forward. But that's a good point that you just made.
Thank you, man. And I've been saying it for a while. One of the reasons I've really enjoyed my AI experience with a lot of these generative models so far is because there are no ads, right?
Right.
Um,
Right, right,
I remember YouTube before they had ads. That was way better.
right,
I don't want to have a message shoved down my throat every minute of every day where it's like, yeah, buy this, do that, think this way, right? And I am going to probably probably use ChatGPT less moving forward
right,
to other systems because I don't, even though I have like a business tier that's apparently not going to get ads, but like it'll happen eventually, right?
right,
And then how are they? And I haven't done enough reading on it, but like, are they going to be listed as ads,
right,
right? Or is it just going to be like another answer, right? And you just don't know that it's an ad, which is also a
right.
problem, right? So you start thinking about all these things and how the dominoes are going to fall. And just also combine that with the investors' demands for some return, right?
Absolutely.
Which they should. Like, if you invest in something, you should get return, right? So
Right.
it's just it how they play this card is going to determine, I think, their future as a company.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because, I think about, some of the valuations that are being made. They are insane.
Hmm. They are.
Like we've never seen valuations the way they are being evaluated right now. Before it used to be, the unicorn used to be $1 billion valuation, right? And now that we're going to a potentially $1 trillion, sheesh,
Yeah.
it's we're in definitely different times.
Yeah, it really is, man. And I mean, I think part of that's going to be like like inflation, right? Where
Right.
like there's just more money. We printed like $6 trillion over the last what 8 years,
Yes.
6 7 years, and it's like, I mean, yeah, like when there's another $6 trillion, of course, the valuation is going to go up, but like not that much, especially
Right.
not for a company that's pre. I mean, not pre-revenue, but like that. I don't know it for a fact, but I know that I know OpenAI is running at a loss.
Right,
You
right,
know.
right. And that's one of the things is the path to profitability.
Hmm.
And how do you get to that path? And as you said, people are or leaders are evaluating those different paths and saying, well, how are we going to get profitable so this way our investors stay energized and committed to our outcome and not shift their priorities to some other outcome or investment.
100%, man. 100%. Before we wrap up here, man, are there any points you'd like to make? And I'd love it if you talk a little bit about some of the philanthropic work you do as well, if you don't mind.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, this has been a great conversation, Nick. I really appreciate you having me. I'm excited to be here, and hopefully, folks gain some insight based on the conversation that we had. I would just say that there's a continued focus on learning, and not just absorbing the what is provided to you in some of the short clips that are in the social media platforms, but really just taking your time to research and understand those things which you need. Like there's a lot of great resources out there. There's a lot of great learning platforms. So definitely encourage that. Rocket Gov is definitely another area that I'm super excited about. We been doing philanthropic events for over 5 years now, and we're looking to just continue to create avenues for public-private partnership, and not just on in giving donations and contributions to organizations aligned to government agencies, but also helping the community. Right,
Hmm.
we had resume workshops and career counseling and things of that nature. So this way, you don't as a person have to feel alone
Hmm.
in the space. And we want to be able to meet folks where they are. So we do have networking events. We do have a golf event that actually supports, the veteran community. We have our big event, which is Gov Jam, which is really exciting. We have a lot of great bands, but it's really around people. And that's one of the things that I wanted to focus on. I've been in this industry for a very long time. And what I realized is, though I've been in technical roles and leadership roles, that it comes down to people. And
Hmm.
that's one of the things that I believe that we can't lose track of, even as we start to advance with AI and technology and engineering.
Yeah, man, and that's one area that you and I love the work you do. Everybody should go to Daryl's events. I've been to going to them for a long time. They're awesome.
But
Um,
also collaborations, man. That
yeah,
is
man,
awesome. And I'm glad
collaborations
to
is
be
fun.
partnering with you on that.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate you doing that, man. Collaborations is shaking up the entire event space in the government contracting world. And we also, we're also proud to support. We have a partnership with the Mid Atlantic chapter of the Make a Wish Foundation.
Excellent.
Uh, and we raise money for specifically a fund called Operation Dreammaker that they have that grants wishes for the children of active duty military members and
Oh,
veterans, specifically in
incredible.
the DC area. Because I'm with you, like people are people, man, and like that's where one of the reasons I'm fascinated with history, because again, human people are people. If we were born 2,000 years ago, you're still a person. You're gonna have
Right,
different values and different thoughts, and you're gonna
right.
interpret the world differently, but you know people are everything, man. A company is just a bunch of people pulling in the same direction, and
Absolutely.
it's also like a societal construct that we all agree exists, but
Right.
that might be a little too philosophical for this conversation.
I just I think to close it out, when we talk about people, the reason why, certain cultures and certain nations operate the way they do is based on trust.
Hmm.
The beauty of our nation is that we are a trust-based or nation. So therefore, there's a lot of trust that people have positive intent.
Hmm.
And being able to keep that trust is really important and is critical to our fabric. So that's really important. So that's a great point.
Yeah, man. Really appreciate you hopping on there. I really had a great time with you this morning chatting. And
Same, same. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And check out Robots and Red Tape. There's
yeah,
definitely a lot of great podcasts, and I'm glad I can be a part of it.
man, really appreciate that. Love to have you back again sometime. And to everybody out there, you are the best part of Robots and Red Tape. And, really, really excited to have Darryl here. And I hope you all have enjoyed this episode. And I hope you're having a wonderful day. Thank you.